Hi guys, welcome to the last part, which will be questions based on the second part of the revision session that we did. And just as a reminder, the topics were metals and non-metals, terrestrial environments, water and aquatic environments, and fossil fuel and alternative sources. So the first paper I want to try is June 2017, and it's actually the very first question, which is based on information that we would have gotten from the topic of terrestrial environments. Right, so let's get into it. So Sandra lives on the island of Montserrat. Her father buys an electronic weather station which he installs and connects to the computer in the air conditioned computer room. So there's a small sensor which has been hung on a nail in the backyard shed, and it collects weather data. So that's temperature, pressure, as well as humidity, and sends the data to the main unit, which attempts to predict the weather. So part one: what type of weather would most likely be predicted when the sky is full of dark gray nimbus clouds? So we know anything dark gray, nimbus clouds, this is rainy or stormy weather. Part two: what kind of weather is most likely expected when the atmospheric pressure is rising? So, with a rise in the atmospheric pressure, we know that this should indicate sunny or calm weather, whereas with a decrease in the atmospheric pressure, then that is indicating rain is close. Part 3: the weather station indicates a forecast of rain, and the news announces that the hurricane, which has been upgraded, the hurricane watch has been upgraded to a hurricane warning. So, state three appropriate activities that Sandra's family should undertake to prepare for the hurricane. Now, for this question, there's no one or three specific answers. There's many different things we can do to prepare for a hurricane. And I think being from the Caribbean, we should know all of these things, especially because like the ODPM would put out whether it be messages that they send directly to your phone through any of the networks. The little animations that go on TV, or just information that we would get online, even just going through Facebook or Instagram or anything like that, or common sense, quote unquote, right? We would know there's just certain actions that we should put in place to prepare for a hurricane. So I just wrote five of them. We can stock up on, or they can stock up on canned foods, get bottled water that will make sure that they have safe water to drink. They should board up the windows, put bags of sand by the doors to prevent water from coming in. This is especially required if you are living or if they are living in an area where it floods very easily. And the last one that I put was like to get candles, charge your phones, get batteries for flashlights, and also if you have a radio that works with battery, you should also get the batteries for that. Also, if you wanted, you could put, if they have solar equipment, make sure that, it's powered. Or if there's any sunlight, they could still, get any little bit that they could get to make sure that they have light just in case the electricity goes when or if the hurricane actually does hit, right? So then part four, explain how a hurricane develops. So we had discussed this. We said that a hurricane develops when water vapor from the sea rises and it cools, turning into rain, right? And as it condenses, while this is occurring, the energy powers the hurricane. So while the water is condensing, while condensation is occurring, right, this is releasing energy, and that energy in turn is used to power the hurricane. And then you have a cycle that is continuous where you have moist, warm air is continuously rising, replacing that has been cooled. And this is what creates the powerful winds, eventually leading to the hurricane being formed. I think I worded this a little funny, but we just spoke about it there, right? But that's the gist of it. 3 marks. So part B, in 1995, the Suffolk Hills hurricane volcano erupted. So part two, identify two hazardous materials produced by the hurricane, and for each material, suggest one effect on Sandra's community. So write your answer in the following table. So remember, we have various gases that are emitted. We also have dust, we have the lava, the magma, many different things that are released from an active volcano, right? So two hazards that I simply put carbon dioxide and dust. So for the carbon dioxide, I put this would increase the levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, making it hard for them to breathe. And dust, we could also go in that direction of saying that the dust will cause air pollution, in which would lead to respiratory problems for persons in the community. Or if we didn't want to stay on that same breathing topic, we could go on to say that the dust could contaminate the waterways, making the water unsafe to drink. So if they have like tanks or barrels that they have water in, that doesn't have like a secure lid, then the dust can go in there, making the water unsafe to drink. Then part two. So Kikam Jenny is a live submarine volcano located near northern Grenada. So suggest one effect of an eruption of Kikam Jenny on the on the ecology of the coast of Grenada. So if it erupted, what would happen? There are different things that we could think about that would happen. I just listed three here, so you can figure out if you agree or disagree, or if there's anything else that you would have wanted to put. So I put one, the hot lava or magma could kill the plants and animals that would be there. Two, that could also go into part one there, stating that there'll be a loss of habitats. Two, the temperature increase can affect the living organisms. So remember, with this eruption, there's going to be a rise or an increase in the temperature. The water in that area is going to become really warm. And remember, biotic organisms depend on the abiotic factors to survive, and this is how they pick where they can survive or where they are going to live, right? So if the temperature increases way above what I am used to, then I cannot stay there. I could die. So, like our organisms that cannot move, that are stuck, let's say, to rocks, or like the plants, they could die. Others would have to migrate, right? Three, the levels of toxic gases, so like the carbon dioxide that is being bubbled in the water, can change the pH or lower the dissolved oxygen concentrations, all leading to killing or hampering the animals as well as the plants that would be in that area. So the second part of this was a graph. I didn't do this part. This part didn't really have much to do with the topic, but it's for graph skills. So you, if you are doing this paper, you could practice it. Then I went on to, let me see, question three. So question three here gave us a little bit of metals and non-metals, right? So let's see. A. So table 3 shows some properties of metallic and non-metallic elements, A, B, C, and D. So we have the table there, the elements, if they can conduct electricity, their melting point, as well as their density. So the first question asks us to suggest with one reason one element in table 3 that is a metal. So I said A, right? You can also pick C. So I said the reason for picking A is that it has a high melting point as well as it's a conductor of electricity and it has a high density. Then two suggest two uses of element A and two uses of element B other than making cooking pots. So I put two could be making jewelry for element A, jewelry, electric wires, or doorknobs. We can also choose like pipe taps, all of these things. And then element B, I said like rocket fuel, jewelry, because we know diamonds, right? Diamonds are not metals. And um, three, we can use like welding tools. So there are some welding tools where they use the diamonds at the tip to help drill through the material, right? Then we have part B. So just one advantage of using the following to make cooking pots. So we have plastic and aluminum. So for plastic, I put that it can be used as handles as it's an insulator. So it would not allow the person to be burnt because that part does not conduct heat. And aluminium is very lightweight, it's easy to clean, it's a relatively cheap material that can be beaten into any shape, so you could get different shapes of pots. And it's also a great conductor, which will allow the food to be cooked easily and very quickly. Then part C lists three factors that can affect the rate of rusting of metal fixtures in houses. Excuse in houses located near to the sea or industrial plants. So remember, based on where someone is, their environment, this could affect the rate of rusting due to different factors that would be in the air. So when it comes to the sea, it could be the sea salt that would be in the air, or the which would be the sodium chloride, and we have a high humidity as well. And then when it comes to it being close to the industrial plants, it could be like the acidic gases that would be released from these factories or the plants. That could eventually, if we want to go on to a further route, we can say acid rain, right? Then D. So John makes iron burglar bars for the window in his home. So just two ways by which he could prevent the bars from rusting. So he could paint it, cover it with grease, he could oil it, or he could go about galvanizing it, which is coating it in a layer of tin. So part four, or question four, sorry, um, four deals with fossil fuels and alternative energy. Right. I wasn't seeing it properly for a second there. Right. Sorry. So the question goes, many environmentalists are calling on Caribbean countries to be less dependent on fossil fuels as a source of energy and to move towards the use of alternative sources of energy. So that means that we need to shift from non renewable sources to renewable sources of energy. So the first question is A, define the term fossil fuel and state two examples of fossil fuels. So very short, I put that a fossil fuel is a natural fuel that is made from the remains of dead plants and animals that were kept under specific pressures and temperatures for a very long period of time. So that could be millions of years. And two examples of a fossil fuel, we have coal as well as crude oil. So, part two, they said to suggest four environmental problems that can occur as a result of the use of fossil fuels in the Caribbean. So, when we think about what fossil fuels do, we know that we have to burn these fossil fuels through the process of combustion to get anything useful from them. So, when you're thinking about what is released from or by this process, or what happens maybe when we are using it or transporting any byproduct or thing that happens along the way of using these fossil fuels, this would give you your four suggestions. So I put six. I put acid rain. So the chemicals or the gases, sorry, that would be released from the combustion, mixing with the water in the atmosphere, falling as the acid rain, which will damage the environment. Two, we can have oil spillage. We all know the effects of this. Three, eutrophication, and we went through that in detail in the notes. Four, we can have ocean acidification by the raising or rising carbon dioxide levels. And as a byproduct of that, we know in the Caribbean, the acidification is it could hamper or anywhere, not just the Caribbean, but it hampers or tampers with the food chains or the food webs that we have there. As we said before, the biotic factors depend on the abiotic factors to determine where is a safe space or where they can comfortably live. Then we have extreme weather conditions, so the throwing off of the seasons. So what we had before, we didn't have snow and all of these things. We still don't, but it's like the rainy season, the dry season. We had like set periods of time when we expected this, but now we may have more of a dry season throughout the year, or randomly during the dry season, we may have a lot of rain falling, right? So, all of that throwing off of the weather conditions. And we also have the raising sea levels, right? So, the further out the sea is coming up, the more it's taking or coming inland, destroying terrestrial habitats. Something I said I'm not comfortable with. I think I made a mistake somewhere here. I think when I mentioned galvanizing, somehow I think I said tin covering the metal with tin. I I really think I made that stupid error. It is actually supposed to be zinc. It kept playing in my mind. I just had to go back to correct that, right? So galvanizing is the process of where we coat the metal with a layer of tin. Why do I keep saying tin? Of zinc. Sorry, right? Let me write that just in case I have confused anybody. All right, so it's the process of covering the iron with zinc. Let me put that. Wow, well, I was writing in capital letters anyway. Right, I feel comfortable now. Nice. So let's continue on our way. Right. So part one. So identify two alternative energy sources to fossil fuels other than solar energy that can be used in the Caribbean. So we have examples like hydroelectric energy. We also have wind energy, right? Well, they said apart from solar energy. So the hydroelectric energy, we know we're using water to generate energy there. And with wind energy, well, that speaks for itself. So you have like the wind farms and all of that. But obviously, all of these things come with, a grain of salt as you have to think about, okay, yes, we could use it, but there are some reasons as to why we cannot. But those are two that could be used in the Caribbean. Then part two, So discuss two advantages and one disadvantage of using solar energy to satisfy the national energy needs of a country. So an advantage that I thought I should put is that the Caribbean is heavily impacted by the sun, as we don't have seasons where we are without it. So even during the rainy season, especially now with this whole throwing off of the seasons, we still have a lot of sun, right? So we can benefit almost every day from having that sun to charge these solar systems, or these solar panels. And the second point we have is that it would reduce our need to use fossil fuels, therefore reducing our carbon footprint. So in the Caribbean, we still use fossil fuels as our main source of getting energy. So if we could come up with a valid system as to how we can use solar energy to satisfy our needs, we would not need to use as much fossil fuels anymore. Therefore, we wouldn't be burning as much, and it could help us clean up our the carbon footprint that we have. And a disadvantage, I found two that I could put, even though you have to put one. So I said, well, two of the easiest ones to think about is the fact that it costs a lot of money. So, solar panels may be expensive or too expensive for some persons to purchase. And two, it requires a lot of space for a solar farm. So if we are thinking of, okay, not as individual households purchasing solar systems, and it's actually like something done by the country, so we set up solar farms, and that energy, which is we collect from the sun, and we know is going to be converted into electricity by the photovoltaic cells. Still, where are we going to get the space to put all of this to power not just part of the nation, but the entire nation? So, that in itself is going to be a problem. So, the disadvantage being it requires a lot of space that some countries may not have. And I think that was it for 2017. So we can move over to 2009, and I think it just had one question here on water and aquatic environment. And that was question 4. So we have A. Figure 5 shows the fractional distillation apparatus used to separate mixtures of liquids in the laboratory. So three sections are labeled A, B, and C. So we have the whole layout, and I hope you all remembered the diagram we looked at in the discussion or what you did in school, right? So, question or one or part one, list the physical states of the material usually present in section A. So we have A here, that would usually be a gas, right? Two, name the process occurring in each of the following labeled sections. So in part B, we have condensation occurring here because this is where the gas is being converted into a liquid. And then in C, this is where we have boiling occurring, right? Because the heat or the heat source will be here, applying the heat energy to the liquid inside here or the mixture inside here, and the gases would diffuse um or you sorry evaporate based on their boiling points. Then part 3, the distillation flask contains a mixture of liquids W with a boiling point of 180 degrees Celsius, X with a boiling point of 60 degrees Celsius, and Y with a boiling point of 100 degrees Celsius. Which of W, X, or Y will be collected in the receiver first? So it would be the one with the lowest boiling point, therefore X would be received first. Now, part B. Fossil fuels are gradually being supplemented by renewable energy sources such as solar energy. So, one major environmental concern associated with using fossil fuels. So, we can put anything based on what we spoke about. I just put acid rain, right? And part two, still one reason which may limit the use of solar energy in the Caribbean. So it could be what we discussed in paper the 2017, which we just did there. It could be cost or the space. Now, part C, Mr. Wong decided to build a simple solar water heater. His design is shown in figure 6. So study figure 6 and answer the questions which follow. So let me just come up a little bit. Right. So 1. Which method of heat transfer is most important for this solar water heater to operate? So remember, we have three types of heat transfer. We have radiation, conduction, and convection. Radiation, which we know is how the sun's energy gets to the earth or from the heat source. Um, that's radiation there. Two, conduction with the metals. So with the pan, as the typical example that we would do, the heat from the energy source giving the molecule that is closest to it energy, which it then passes on to the rest until all of them has energy vibrating. This is how the whole pan will get hot. And this is how the materials on the inside would then be given the heat. And when it comes to things like water, we know convection, or even like if we're talking about air with convectional currents, um, right? So we know that that is where the whole thing, where the cold water at the bottom is more dense, it collects the heat, it gets hot, which decreases its density, it raises or rises to the top, and in that process, it pushes the cooler water down to the bottom, and then it will create that continuous cycle. And it's the same thing with the air. So the cool air will push or displace the warm air, right? So the convectional currents there with the sea breeze, or even when we're talking about that topic of ventilation in the household, right? So when they say the most important, we know we have all taking part, but which is the most important? Is it radiation? And would your answer be that, okay, without the radiation from the sun, then there would be no energy being transferred? Is it conduction? Because if the metal box doesn't heat up, then the water wouldn't. Or is it convection? The water, um, the cold water displaces the warm water as it gains that energy and it creates that conventional current. So to me, I thought, and you can let me know if you agree with me in the comments. I put that conduction is the most important because we're getting that solar energy, right, or the radiation from the sun. But if the metal box, or if that material that we had the water, and if it wasn't metal, or it wasn't something that would conduct the heat quickly, or would not conduct heat at all, then the water would not be getting hot. The water at the surface may be warm, but not right through, right? So I think conduction is the most important heat transfer method here. Then part two, why did Mr. Wong paint the exterior of the water heater in black? So the black color, we know it absorbs heat and keep it trapped. And part three, would you expect to find hotter water to the top or the bottom of the heater? And I said to the top. Now they said give one reason for your answer. And I said that at the top, this is where you have the direct contact with the heat from the sun. So the molecules at the top there, this would be where it would be the warmest compared to the bottom. Then part 5A, Mr. Wang needs to cover the water heater. So should the covering be made with metal, transparent glass, or plastic? And I put metal. And they said to give one reason for your answer above. I said the conduction of the heat with or by the metal. All right, so you're ensuring that that heat energy is being passed to the water because of this conducting material, which is the metal casing that you have it in. And six, suggest one appropriate use of the water from the solar water heater. So we know he could use it in his water showers or the hot water to shower with. And the last one, seven, suggests two reasons for Mr. Wong using a solar water heater instead of a gas heater or electric heater. So I just put three simple ones. One, it saves him money on the electricity bill. Two, it's a cleaner source to use for the environment. And three, it's less expensive as he would have to go out there and buy this gas heater or the electric heater and probably pay someone to come and install it as well. Whereas with this metal casing, he built that. So it's less expensive as he can build it. And he can also build it to his liking. So whatever size that he wants it, which is most convenient to him. I think that was it for this paper. And the last paper, 2006, we're getting at another metals and non-metals question here. Part 1A or question 1A, complete the word equation for each of the reactions below. So one, aluminum and hydrochloric acid. We know aluminum is above the hydrogen on the reactivity series list. Therefore, it will react. So we get aluminum chloride, which is the salt and hydrogen gas being emitted. And then we have iron and water. We know that we will get a reaction from that. And the reaction that we'll get will give us the salt, which is the hydrate ion oxide and hydrogen gas. Now, part B. The Ramsing family moves into their new home by the beach. Within 2 months, the hinges on their metal gate begins to rust. So part one, name the chemical process by which the rusting takes place. It's an oxidation reaction. Two, write a word equation for the formation of rust. So we know for the formation of rust, we need iron, water, as well as oxygen. And what that gives us is hydrate iron 3 oxide. And that's the rust. Then three, explain why rusting of the gate has occurred so rapidly. And this is because of the increased humidity, the temperature, as well as the salt in the air from the seawater. We know um, all of these factors lead to rusting occurring rapidly. Then part C, the kitchen window of the Ramsing's home has also begun to rust. So the windows of the bedroom, however, show no sign of rusting. So aluminum, steel, and plastic are three materials used to make the windows. So which of the three materials is likely to have been used in the windows? So in the bedroom, where we said there's no sign of rusting, we can say that's plastic. And in the kitchen, we can say that that is steel. So give one reason or give reasons for your answers above. Well, the plastic does not rust as it's not a metal. And the steel would rust, right? Because it's an alloy of iron and carbon. So therefore it will rust with the environmental conditions that they have to deal with there, which is living next to the sea or the beach. Then part D, the Ramsing's previous home is located close to several factories. So while they lived there, their children were repeatedly affected by various respiratory ailments. And at their new home by the beach, there has been a marked decline in the frequency of respiratory ailments. To suggest what might have been responsible for the one, respiratory ailments, that could be the dust or the gases in the air from the factories, and two, the decline in the frequency of the respiratory ailments comes from that. You could um, with it, however, right? But in simple terms, I just put the clean air or the fresh ocean breeze or the fresh sea breeze, right? Because remember, next to the ocean, we always have that conventional current where the cool air displaces the warm air. So you always have that movement of the air as well as the particles that would be in the air. All right. Then part E, the following experiment is carried out by students in the laboratory. 1 gram of each metal X, Y, and Z is placed in a test tube. 5 centimeters cube of dilute hydrochloric acid is added to each test tube and the reaction is observed. So the results are shown in the table 1 below. So we have X, it was very effervescent. So it showed effervescence, which is fizzing or bubbling. Y, no reaction observed. And Z, slight effervescence. So part one, using the experimental table results in table one, write the metals in order of increasing activity. So increasing, we know we are going from Y to Z to X, X being the most reactive. So two, Y is non-reactive in hydrochloric acid. So suggest the name of one metal which is non-reactive in hydrochloric acid. We know that would be those under the hydrogen in the reactivity series. So we can say gold or even copper. Three, why was the same volume, which was the 5 cm cubes of hydrochloric acid, added to each of the three metals? And the reason why it was that amount is because you want to keep that as your constant, right? You know, in experiments, we have the constant and we have those that would change. But keeping that at 5 cm cubes, you're ensuring that nothing was different except what the metal was. All the conditions were the same. So you can't say, well, okay, this didn't react the same way because we put 1 cm cube less in it. So maybe if we had added the same amount, this would have thing. You keep everything else constant and you just change that variable that you want, which is the metals that was placed in the test tubes. And I think that is it there. Right, so yes, that's it there. So we touched on a question from fossil fuels and alternative sources of energy, water and aquatic environment, terrestrial environment, as well as metals and non-metals. So I do hope this revision, the entire thing, was helpful, that you can feel free to go back and look at the videos to make sure you know that you're up to mark with everything. If you have any comments, let me know. If you found any errors or you disagreed with anything that I put in any of the answers here or even in the previous one, let me know as well. And just in general, let me know what you're thinking, how you're feeling with exam coming up. You know, if you're ready, if you want to get more past papers done, all of these things, just let me know. All right. So that's it for this free session here with the revision. And again, I really, really do hope that it was helpful, or if it didn't help everybody, at least it could have helped one person, right? So thank you for looking at the videos and for sharing, all of you who did. And best of luck, all the best with your upcoming exams, all your exams, not just integrated science. All right. Bye.